Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. This is all about racecraft, and as the title suggests, in this video you're going to learn how not to be a dickhead on track. Now most people don't set out with the intention of being a dickhead, some people just want to win, but most people who are watching this video want the exact opposite. They just don't want to be seen as a dick on track. So in this video we're going to cover a range of sections. We're going to go from everything from your race start, accident avoidance, overtaking, blue flagging, defending, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, hopefully you'll get some tips from it and you'll be able to be not a dickhead when you're out on track. Let's do it. First up, we're going to talk about the race start. Everybody always concerns themselves majorly with the race start. You do your quali session and it all depends, where do you end up? Usually either the front of the grid or back of the grid are pretty safe places to be. When you're in the middle, it gets a little bit tricky. One of the reasons for that is some people get a great start, some people get a terrible start. So my first tip for you would be practice your race starts. So just on an empty track, whether it's offline, online, when there's nobody around or whatever, practice those race starts because they're crucial. Because the thing is, if you get a bad start, all of a sudden you're sandwiched between two cars. That makes turn one a nightmare, and before you know it, you're the person who caused it. All because you got a bad start. Someone might dive up the inside or whatever because they're faster than you. Why are they faster than you? Because you got a bad start. Similarly, you can actually be the person who gains a couple of places. Now, I'm not saying win it in turn one or win it on lap one, but a fundamental part of racing is actually getting that good start, getting that confidence, and more than anything, achieving that position. Because my most important turn one tip, and I did a little turn one survival guide a couple of months back, my most important tip is in turn one, you want to assert the dominance of that position. So you want to get to the inside of the track. Think about it. 9 out of 10 times when something happens in turn one, it's somebody locking up or it's other cars making contact or whatever. What happens if there's a turn off to this side? What happens if somebody gets contact? They go off into the gravel. If you're on the inside, you're very unlikely to be taken out or being swept up by one of those contacts. Similarly, you're not making it inviting for people to go up the inside. So even if you have the inside line and even if you're going slower than everybody, you're tempting people to go around the outside, which is fine because they're not going to do any harm to you when they're on the outside. Even if they completely overcook it and they're on the outside and they start spinning, they're just going off and you've got the inside line. So don't be worried about being super fast in turn one. All you need to do is be confident and have a good position. Another really important thing about the race start is to keep some distance. As I said, you don't have to be the fastest on lap one, you just have to keep that position. You just have to be in control of that position. If there's a car ahead of you, if they're a meter ahead of you, it's a lot more difficult to react or get around them than if you're 20 meters behind them. Now obviously you don't want to be too far behind them because you're probably going to start going slow and other cars will pass you out. But go only as fast as you need to be. There's no point in being right up behind someone else when there's a 15-20 meter gap behind you. Drop off a few meters because if and when something does happen, it gives you that little bit more space to just move around. So control that distance in front of you and behind you. As I say, try to take the inside line. You don't necessarily want to have the racing line. The racing line obviously is preferred, but a lot of the time the racing line involves going wide, and especially when you're starting a race and the adrenaline is high, going wide often tempts people to jump up the inside. So assert the dominance on the inside line. Take note of your cold tires because you don't want to be that person who locks up or drifts wide and ends up taking somebody out. So don't drive faster than you need to on the first lap. Nobody sets their fastest lap on lap one. So really, really, really important, don't overdrive on lap one. The next thing that I want to talk about is accident avoidance. One thing that is very, very important, as I've just mentioned, is keeping that distance, but you want to be able to react when somebody does spin out or when there's a contact ahead of you. You want to buy yourself just enough time so that you can get around them or do whatever you need to do. Golden rule, if a car spins in front of you, aim for the back of the car. You don't have to understand that rule fully. If you are mathematically minded and stuff like that, and if you know about centripetal force or centrifugal force or momentum or whatever the hell they call it, you have to bear in mind when a car starts spinning, they're most likely going to go in the direction that the nose is pointed. Now, if it's a very violent spin, it's very hard to predict that. But if there's a slow corner and there's a car ahead of you and they start spinning, if you go for the back of their car, you're going to get past them a lot more than if you go to the front of their car. Because think about it, when they start sliding, if they start regaining grip, they're going to start going in the direction that they're pointed. So if you go past them on the nose side and they gain grip, they're going to take you out. Whereas if you go past them on the rear and they gain grip, you get space. So always aim for the rear of a car when there's an accident. You don't necessarily have to think about it too much. Do it the next time it happens and then come back and say in the comments that, hey Lawrence, yeah, that actually worked. I don't know why it worked, but it worked. The next thing you want to do is command that inside line. As I've already alluded to, if you're coming up to a corner and that corner is a wide entry, so there's like a straight after or whatever, but there's a car on you, the second you go wide, they're going to say, oh, I'll have some of that gap. And they're going to try and outbrake you or whatever. They're very likely to do something stupid. If that car is not going to do something stupid, they'll know that you've gone wide because you want a good entry on a good exit at the end of the corner, and they're probably going to tuck in behind you or maybe try and go even wider and get an even better exit. If they're really good at braking or whatever, they can make the move, go on the inside, but the golden rule here is you don't want to expose that inside in the first place. Of course, cars can go around the outside, and I tempt cars all the time to go around the outside. I would rather be slow on the inside line than be on the outside line and risk somebody dive bombing and potentially locking up or whatever, especially at the start of a race, the first couple of laps when cars are just getting used to each other and stuff like that. So remember that even if the racing line ideally means that you go for a very wide entrance to the corner with a shallow exit, if there's a car right behind you, they're going to be tempted by the fact that there's a gap there, and you're just drawing trouble on yourself. Yes, it's going to be their fault. Yes, you're going to moan and complain, but yes, you could have done something about it. You could have just kept that inside line, sent them wide, let them do whatever they want when they go wide. Usually when you go wide and they go offline, they're going to catch some marbled rubber or something like that anyway, and it's going to be very difficult for them to put the power down. If they're quicker, then they're quicker. Then they've gained the position fairly or whatever, but you've not been binned. That is the golden rule here, and that is why race etiquette is so important. Opening up that gap, leaving it, even if you have every right to do it, it tempts cars to go in there, and they will, and it's going to go wrong. So don't leave that gap. And if somebody's being overly aggressive, if they're constantly, almost bumping you or constantly going for that gap, my advice would be let them pass. Eventually they're going to bin it. Something's going to happen to them eventually. If an overly aggressive car just won't survive unless they're constantly on the edge and they're fast anyway, in which case they'd probably pass you even in the fairest of situations. Just let them pass. It's not worth it. We're here to enjoy ourselves. It's not worth it to try and keep an overly aggressive car at bay when you're battling for P9. It's just not worth it. The next section I want to talk about is overtaking. When there's a car beside you, leave them space. Like, treat the car beside you the way that you want to be treated. That's not to say, let them pass. Give them just enough space. Don't squeeze them or anything like that. Don't leave them acres of space so that they can easily get past you, because they don't want that either. They want good racing. They don't necessarily just want to be let past. So if there's a car beside you, know that they're there. Do bear in mind, when you're overtaking, when there's a car beside you, you're both being slowed. So sometimes, in some cases, it is actually more favourable to let that car pass and battle with them and try and overtake them, especially if there's a bit of a draft, you get that opportunity to overtake again. But when you are battling with someone, when there's a car beside you, cars behind you are catching up and the cars ahead are getting away. So be very, really pick your battles, be very careful about that. You don't want to be side by side with a car through loads and loads of corners if your goal is to get up another couple of positions. Obviously, if you're racing for the lead or whatever, depending on the situation, it can be great fun, it can be absolutely amazing, but the main thing that you want to do is leave that car space. If you're leaving that car space, you can't both use all the track. It means you're both going slower. So really pick your battles. The next thing I want to talk about is the car in front of you's braking points. If you don't know how the car in front of you drives, or if you haven't been behind them for a few laps, or even if you're still on cold tires, you don't know exactly where they're going to brake. So my advice would be take a slightly different line to them and concentrate on getting your exits rather than your entries to the corner. Because everybody wants to brake as late as possible and get a great exit. That's fantastic, but it's not realistic. When you don't know what the driver in front of you is going to do, you might end up binning them if you're right up behind them. They might brake sooner or later. They might brake too late. You think that you can brake too late. You both go off into the gravel and your race is over. So race your own line where possible, but make sure that if something happens to the car in front of you, that you're not going to be involved in it. Make sure you're looking at your brake markers, not at their brake lights. Never look at their brake lights. That's a terrible idea. But the golden rule is when you are trying to overtake, especially at the start of a race, concentrate on those corner exits more than braking into the corners, because going into the corners and braking is very dependent on your grip levels and your tire temperatures and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to have that at the start of a race, so concentrate on those exits, because the car in front of you is most likely concentrating on their braking zone. They're going to lock up a little bit. They're still finding that grip. So sacrifice the fact, drive at 90% going into the corner and nail that exit, because you're going to completely obliterate them going out of the next corner. You've conserved your tires and you've gained a position. And the big one for overtaking, don't dive bomb. If you don't know what a dive bomb is where I kind of touched on it before, but where you're going into a corner, the car in front of you is taking their natural line, but you say, hey, there's a little bit of space there, and you completely ignore your braking zones and you just go for it, and you end up hitting them, and you might be able to keep going, but they go off into the gravel, and it's shitty. Nobody likes dive bombers. Dive bombing is really just lousy. You don't want to do it. You want to get up beside a car legally, ideally before the braking zone. You don't want to make a move in the braking zone because cars are committed. You don't want to try, unless you've got a very clean move, especially around the outside in the braking zone, that's fine. But up the inside in a braking zone is super aggressive, and you really need to know what you're doing if you're going to be doing that. So just don't dive bomb, never use the other car as a brake. One of the biggest traits that people take from arcade games into simulation is that bumping off other cars to get past. It just sucks, it's lousy. It is exactly what this video is trying to avoid. On the subject of overtaking, if you're practicing overtaking and stuff like that, I highly recommend never racing against AI. AI will always try to make you feel good about yourself. The last thing that developers want, and the last thing that anybody wants, I guess, is to be sitting down at a game or a simulator for their entertainment, and the computer drivers just drive like absolute dicks. What happens 9 out of 10 times in any simulator that you see with AI, even iRacing's AI, ACC, Assetto Corsa's AI, when you get even your nose beside the back of their car, they leave you space. They always go wide. In reality, that's not what happens at all. If your nose is just behind the rear of someone's car, they're unlikely to see you first and foremost, but you don't have the position yet. That car is going to come in towards that apex and you are going to get squeezed. You're going to have to go back. You are not beside them if your bumper is up alongside their rear bumper. That's not beside a car. AI teaches you that that is a legal overtake, but you really have to be careful of that. It just doesn't work. Don't practice against the AI. Big advice would be find a league, find a community to race with. Just find other drivers who have similar pace to you, and you'll usually find them in a league. The next thing I want to talk about is defending. Defending is really, really important. You don't want to be going down a straight weaving. You don't want to block the car behind you. You get one adjustment on a straight. So if there's a car behind you and they're going one way, you get to make a slight adjustment, but don't make any aggressive adjustments because you're most likely just going to end up binning them as well. Don't be a dick. You just want to be nice to the other. If another car is coming at you fast, they have your slipstream, there's nothing you can do, no amount of weaving or anything like that. It's not legal. You're going to get punished in most races for that. Obviously, if you're racing offline or against AI, you're not going to get punished, but you're going to get punished. It is bad track etiquette. One adjustment on the straight, but ideally you get a better exit than the car behind you, and they never get in that position. If they have your slipstream, they're gone regardless of how much you weave and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to block them like that. On the subject of defending, if you're going to brake, And if you're going to brake early, make it clear to the car behind. The last thing you want to do is have a car right up behind you and their brake marker is 150, but you're braking hard at 175. They're going to go straight through you. If you do want to brake at the 175 mark and you know that you could brake later in that corner, tap on the brakes very, very slowly before the 175 marker. They'll see your brake lights come on and they have time to react. They'll either try and go beside you or whatever, or they'll just, mostly 9 out of 10 times, they will just stay behind you. You've sent a clear indication to them what you're doing. You're braking, your lights have come on, you're not really losing much speed until you do hit your 175 mark, or you'll probably find even that you can brake later because you've already lost a little bit of speed and you're in control of that position. But more importantly, you're sending clear signals to the cars around you, which is super important if you just want to survive and give good track etiquette and receive good track etiquette from other cars. And in general, especially when defending, but for general positioning, learn to use your mirrors. If you use triples or if you use VR or whatever, you've got great access to your mirrors. Use them. You've got an in-game mirror in most games and you can use that. The iRacing one is a little bit weird because it's super wide and the stuff that shows up in that mirror, it looks way further away. So even if there's a car right up behind you, it looks really far away in the iRacing mirror. So be very, very conscious of that. Now, titles like Assetto Corsa Competizione have really nice car radar functionality. So it shows you when there's a car beside you, it shows you that they're beside you. And it's a really nice graphical interface, and it's especially good for sim racing, track etiquette, and just being aware of what's around you. So I highly recommend having those installed. For Assetto Corsa I use Car Radar, Helicorsa is another one, but they're really, really good, very, very important, and they just make the whole experience and the control that you have a little bit better because you can keep your eyes in front of you while seeing out of the corner of your eye where another car is. A lot of the time when you want to defend your position, you do want to make that adjustment that you're allowed. But if the car is already beside you and you don't know, you don't have a spotter, you can't see it in your mirrors, if you make that move, you're going to take both of you out. Either you're going to spin out or you're going to knock them off the track, and that's just lousy and it's not worth it. So be very aware of your position on track. The next one I'm going to talk about is blue flags. Now I have every intention of doing a dedicated blue flag video in future because there are so many variations of blue flag and rules and all that kind of stuff, but I'll go through a little bit of it quickly here. The ultimate goal with a blue flag means faster car approaching, you need to let them through. You have to yield your position. That does not mean you have to come to a crawl. It means you have to do as little as possible to allow them to not lose pace. So ideally, that car can keep driving as if you're not even there. You want to get out of the way slightly. Now, in most cases, that's as simple as when you're going through a corner and you're coming out of that corner, there's a straight. Just leave off the throttle like 5%. Just a tiny little bit coming out of that corner. Don't accelerate fully. And then that car is going to get past you. They're even going to get some slipstream off you. So you're actually even helping them to get past you. Really, really important though that you don't mess up that other car's line. What often happens is cars get a blue flag, they panic, they brake, they go into a weird racing line, or else they're too far ahead, they go into a weird racing line, and before you know it, the racing lines actually overlap, and it gets very, very messy, very, very fast. So try and stick to your own racing line. So even if they're 2 seconds a lot faster than you, they're not that much faster than you, and they're not way, way faster in every corner. If you do slow them down by even a couple of tenths or whatever, it's not the end of the world. You're more likely to slow them down by doing something that they don't expect than just sticking to your racing line. Remember, they're a faster car, they can probably get past you. So really, really important to only make a minor adjustment, as minor as possible. You want to make zero impact to the faster car's lap. You also want to make as little impact to your own lap. Now where this gets interesting is not everybody knows that. Not everybody kind of thinks about that. Everybody thinks you have to slam on the anchors, let the car pass and go. The thing is, if you're getting blue flagged, odds are the people that you're competing with for position are also getting blue flagged. Here's the fun bit. You get to punish them for not knowing the stuff that you now know. What I'm getting at is, If you're losing no speed on a lap and you know the exact time and place to let a car go past, the faster car is not losing any time, but other cars around you are losing time, you're going to gain on them. When you get a blue flag and somebody goes past you and you've lost as little time as possible and they get past you in a safe way, tuck in behind them. You are now a passenger on their slipstream. Don't try and battle with them or whatever unless you're clearly faster, which you probably aren't because they got past you in the first place. Don't battle with them, but do use their position to your advantage. Because the next time you come up, if you're like in 10th place, you're coming up on P9, P9 gets a blue flag, they see that car battling with another car. It's very difficult for them to only let one of you through. So you need to now put yourself in the position of a car that is giving the blue flag to the car in front, even though you're racing for position with that car in front of the faster car. So fast car in front of you, you're here, and P9, the position ahead of you, is slamming on the brakes or they're going off to the side. Just go, follow the faster car, get those positions. So when the faster car passes, tuck in. I know that they're probably, in multi-class, they're a different class, they're probably way faster cars anyway, but the car in front of you doesn't necessarily know that you're trying your best to get past them. They're concentrating on the car that's giving them a blue flag. They slow down. They're losing more time than they should. They're not following the rules that I've just said. They're going way slower. They're probably completely on a different line. They're no longer racing. You are still racing. You need to put yourself in that mindset of someone's racing and you need to punish them. Capitalize on it. Get past them. It's their problem, not yours. You have no obligation to not pass them. Use those blue flags to your advantage and learn everything there is to know about being blue flagged, getting a blue flag, or even giving blue flags to others, what your rights are, what you can and can't do there. I would love to do a complete video on it if you think that's a good idea. I've got loads more to say on blue flags, the different corners, the different types. Do give a comment in the comments below. Finally, when a car does pass you, if it's a blue flag or whatever, use their slipstream to your advantage. Now, some cars have major slipstreams, some cars don't have a major slipstream, but use the fact that they're faster, the fact that they're breaking that air in front of you, use it to get in that nice unturbulent air and get yourself those extra couple of tenths or hundredths or whatever because they're there, they're free. So put yourself in that position. So I realize that there's quite a lot of information in this video. I don't want to make it too long. I do want to leave you with a couple of just final tips. Firstly, don't rage quit. Doesn't matter if you've been binned, doesn't matter if you even binned someone else, doesn't matter if you had to take a pit stop, missed your pit box, any of that stuff. Don't rage quit. Finish out the race with pride, and next time don't make the mistakes. Finishing out the race is almost like punishing yourself for the earlier mistakes. In a way, the next time you're out on track, you know that, well, if you make a mistake, you're going to have to endure the rest of the race, even though it's not the ideal place to be. If you just rage quit, you go on to the next one, and especially people who don't have good track etiquette, they take all the risks in lap one, didn't work out, next race. They don't care about finishing. If you want good track etiquette, be the person who finishes the race, because then you'll realize what it means if you actually do hit other people or if you get hit by other people. Really important, just finish that race. Secondly, and this is a huge one, massive bugbear of mine, and I see these videos being posted all the time, don't take revenge. Just don't. We're not children. Most people who sim race are like in their 20s and 30s. We're not children. Don't just, it's just stupid. It really wrecks my head. It really annoys me. You see somebody getting squeezed out in a corner or whatever, and then the next corner they just absolutely obliterate them and then they quit out of the game. Like, we're forever trying to say, oh, this is a simulator, and then stuff like that happens. And it's just bad track etiquette. I know that it's our natural reaction to try and take revenge when shit hits the fan. Just don't do it. Be a bigger person than that and just try and beat them. If they go and crash or whatever, then you've beaten them. But ideally, go earn that position. Even if they've gotten the position unfairly, go earn it back fairly, because that's a far bigger win and it pays off far greater in the long run than a revenge binning, which is just going to get you in trouble. And last but not least, Join a community. Find a community, preferably a small community. Larger communities have lots of people coming and going, and like that whole rage quit philosophy, a lot of people start a championship, didn't do well in round one, they never show up again. Join a small community where stuff actually matters, and the golden rule for a small community is that nobody actually really remembers the results, but everybody remembers the racing. You get to know the people around you, not many new people coming in and out, and everybody has put in practice, everybody's putting in effort to do it. Join a small community. I'd highly recommend it. That's it for me for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode as well. We did one last week and it was an absolute blinder. Lots of people really enjoyed it. It's been a very successful video. I had no idea that video would do so well, and I have no idea how this video will do. But if you did enjoy this video, please be aware of the fact that 75% of the people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed. So I'd really appreciate your subscription. Do hit like as well, and the biggest way to contribute to this channel is by actually commenting on these videos. If you like it, share with your friends, all that kind of stuff. Join my Discord as well. It's great fun. I love discussing stuff like this. I love your opinions on stuff like this. So I want to hear from you in the comments below, especially if anything that I've said has resonated or if you've learned anything. Do let me know in the comments below, because it's really important for other people watching this video. I'm Lawrence. Thanks a million for watching. I'll chat to you later.